Welcome to the Executive Coaching Podcast, where Executive Coach Alicia Cowan will discuss leadership topics and coaching solutions to tackle the most difficult problems that keep you from leading your team to success.
Hey there, senior leaders. It's Alicia Cowan. Hey, I'm recording this in March. So if you're listening to this around this time of year, happy spring. I hope you're having a great, amazing spring. We are around the Cowan house. We are in the midst of spring break. My kids just started spring break on Friday, and they're in full swing and enjoying it. We're actually headed to Disney tomorrow, and we're going to go to Hollywood Studios. And then we're going to have a beach day next week. So trying to get some spring break in. I celebrated my 47th birthday last week. And so we headed to the beach because that was my big thing that I wanted to do, is get myself on a beach in the water and accomplish both. So been having a great time just trying to get outdoors and enjoy the sun. And then we've been traveling a lot. I think I mentioned in the last episode, we had headed to Atlanta and then we headed to Dallas. We got to see some friends while we were there. We went for a cheer competition, and my daughter was at NCA, and she got third at the national competition, which we were excited about. But we also got to see some friends while we were there. So that was a lot of fun too. So been having a lot of fun and a busy spring. And that brings me to my topic. There's been a lot going on. And so I know you too, as a senior leader, are busy. I've been talking to you for many years, but this spring has been no exception. I think we came into 2025 and everybody said, they felt catapulted into 2025. And I have to agree. It has been busy. And so today, I want to continue the series that we've been talking about, difficult conversations, because this is one of the most challenging things that I hear us tackling as senior leaders. And today I want to talk about the conversation around saying no and the art of saying no. And how do you set a boundary without burning a bridge? So that is the crux of the issue, right? So how do you help yourself and your team by prioritizing? And maybe that means going down to even one priority. And that's the trick, I think, that we have, right? And I think that's why, as a society, we are always answering the question of how are you doing? A lot of the times with saying, oh, things are so busy. And I struggle with this. So let's be real. It is not an easy thing to tackle. And I want to start off by, thinking about how this occurs. I think a lot of times we say yes to things, and at times we really want to say no. And then later on, after we say yes, we regret it. And as senior leaders, we often face tough decisions like this, where we have to decline requests. It's absolutely necessary to a role, but we have to do it in a way that doesn't damage the relationships that we have and doesn't harm our political capital. And so let's be honest, saying no can be awkward. It can be a difficult conversation, which is why we're talking about it. And especially when the person is even a more senior leader to you, your boss, the C-suite, the board. Perhaps it's within the organization, within a key stakeholder that you have, or maybe it's a team member that you have that's looking up to you to set that example for them. And they're asking for something that they want. So it's not easy, and I admit that. So let's talk about it. Today we'll do a quick conversation around why saying no is such a crucial leadership skill, what the risk of if saying yes is too often, and how do we set boundaries while we maintain trust with our teams, trust with our colleagues, trust with ourselves. So let's dig into it. So why do we as senior leaders struggle to say no? Well, this can be broken down into really simple reasons. Number one, just culturally and organizationally, we have pressures that are real. So, at times, within society, we can be seen, potentially have the sphere of being seen as uncooperative or potentially disengaged or difficult, right? And we don't want that. That's a real thing. When you say no, you don't want to be that person that is not a team player, right? So that can be a real thing. Number two, right now, what we're experiencing and what I think everybody is feeling is a lot of pressure to do more with less. And a lot of you, I talk to you all the time about being stretched beyond your capacity. You know who you are. I've talked to you recently. Some of you are doing jobs and work that has you working in multiple different time zones with hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, and you are expected to take on more and more without having all the resources to do it. So, a lot of times saying no to that can be difficult. On the personal side, I think there's some leadership traps that also help preclude us from saying no. And number one can be just like the tendencies we've built to get to the level that we're at within leadership roles. We might have some tendencies, like again, overachieving. We have tendencies to perform at a really high level. And these tendencies sometimes put us into like this people pleasing mode where we've performed exceedingly high and we've done a lot of what has been asked of us. And sometimes that can just lend itself to being a little bit more people pleasy. So we have to watch out for that. And there's this myth out there that from a leadership standpoint, I think that when we get to those senior levels of leadership, people think that you should be working more and more hours, that the level that you're at and the level that you achieve equates to more work. I've heard people say it over and over. They don't want to take on more roles because they don't want to work more hours, or they get to certain levels and they just stop taking vacations, or they work through vacations and then they pride themselves on not taking sick time and all of that. We like feed into that. And so that personal leadership belief is tricky because at times we are told by society we should always be available in that. And we also see people set that example. I don't believe that that's always the case or that should be the case. But at times that's what can happen. And by believing some of these things that we have to always be on, that we have to people please, we have to say yes to all these things, the costs of this, of overcommitting, are really having its impact on us and it's taking its toll. We see it. We see burnout. We see a lack of strategic focus. We see people not having time for their professional and their personal responsibilities. And that's tough. And so if you are in this cycle, which again, I know some of you are, let's talk about some really simplistic ways on how to say no. Let's talk about the right way to say no. So let's go through a framework of setting some boundaries and saying no. So, really simple tactical thing that you can practice today. So, number one is when you get a request, it's okay to just simply acknowledge it and honor and respect that request. So, for example, if you get an ask, it's okay to say, hey, I really thank you so much. I appreciate you thinking of me for this work or for this project or for this ask. This really sounds like a good opportunity or an exciting opportunity for us. Just acknowledge it. I hear you, appreciate you reaching out and thinking of me. Great. Two, but be clear and transparent on what your capacity is or what your priority is. So, for example, you could say, right now, my focus or my team's focus is on this priority. And I want to make sure that we give it the right attention that it deserves. Okay. Simple statement, also factual on what your priority is, right? Not saying no yet. Haven't heard no yet, right? Just in step two. Step three is to potentially offer an alternative or a compromise when this is possible. Okay. So if you have another example of or a solution that you can offer. So for example, hey, I can't take this on personally, or my team might not have the capacity, but I actually think I might have some resources or a connection for somebody that might be a great fit for you. Again, this is just a simple example, but there are multiple solutions that you could potentially come up with that are not a no. Maybe it's a not right now. Maybe it's another solution that you could offer up. And then the fourth step here is ultimately to stay firm in your decision, but overall positive with this. So, hey, I really appreciate this. At this time, again, because of my priorities, I have to decline this, but I do appreciate you considering me, and I hope we can work on this and collaborate together in the future. Again, simple, simple steps. And I know it's not easy because sometimes you're really frustrated in the moment and there's not a lot of time to do this. But these are really simple steps of things that you can decline personally and professionally. Now, let me go through some really fun examples of what not to say. And I've heard it. So, number one is over apologizing. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad saying this. I just can't do this right now. I hope you're not mad at me. Again, when we have that people pleasing tendency, we might have this like feel the need to like apologize. And being overly apologetic can weaken your leadership presence. So you don't necessarily need to go there. Okay. So do not over apologize. Two, sometimes we're vague with our deflection. Example, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. Okay, so this could lead to even more pressure down the road because they're expecting an answer. And so there's pressure, you're just delaying that pressure and you're delaying by trying to follow up later. So it just adds to your to-do list. Okay, so don't be vague and don't deflect into the future. The third one that I'd say is a no, is the burn the bridge approach. This sounds like there is no way I'm doing that. That is a ridiculous request. We are just way too over capacity for that. Why this is bad? This is obvious. It can damage the relationship. I actually am coaching a leader within an organization that has somebody within the organization that does this. They like flat out decline projects, tell people no, and they're burning bridges left and right. So I do not recommend this one. Don't go there. The fourth what not to say example is the overcommitted yes woman or yes man. This is the one that's like, absolutely, yes, I will make it work. Only later to back out at a later time. So this basically is saying yes, and you're saying yes with the intention of backing out later and saying no later. So this again, it's just a delaying of the response. Or choosing to underdeliver at a later date. Okay. So you don't want to do that. Again, this could damage your reputation. You don't want to go there. All right. So I want to talk through some real life scenarios that I have worked through with people using some of these examples. So the first one, there was one leader that got an opportunity to take on a bigger role that they were not interested in. And they didn't want to close the doors on the future opportunities or future growth. They loved their role, actually. They really loved the company they were with. They just didn't want this particular role. So what we did is we worked through how to show the appreciation, how to still maintain the relationship and say no to this role that they did not want, by really sharing what they did want and what they were after in the future and the reasons why. And so they set this boundary, didn't take a role without wanting it. And it really did pay off later on down the road. So that's one example. Two, I've also worked with senior leaders. A lot of times they're getting pay requests or pay increase requests from their teams. And so we talked through with several countless leaders on how to decline that request if it's not warranted and not justified at the time to do that pay increase, how to like make sure that they keep the engagement of the associate high, but not honor the request in that moment. Okay. So that's one. If you need help with that, it's okay again to show appreciation for the associates, still say no, and to keep the relationship. I've also working through unrealistic deadlines from teams. And so how do you work through and support your team if you're being asked for an unrealistic deadline or if colleagues are asking them to put something through that's just not feasible for them? And then how do you, again, same thing with some of these timelines or these asks from stakeholders. How do you navigate stakeholder pressure while you still maintain the credibility of yourself and your team? Okay. So these are all like real life things. I get it. These are not easy conversations to have, and they're not easy no's to give. And I really especially think This is such a tricky one because I think as we're coming up through the organization, there's not a lot of opportunity for us to say no. There's not a lot of opportunity for us to practice no. And so if you think about it, you as a senior leader, you might have gotten to where you're at by not saying no, right? You probably said yes to a lot of things a lot of times. So this might be a skill that you need to work on, that you need to model. And a lot of times for your team, if you think about it, they're not thinking about how to say no within the organization either. And so again, and sometimes it's not appropriate for everyone in the organization to say no, but it is appropriate for the team to stay focused on priorities. And so that's what I want you to take away is number one, how you're doing this for yourself, but number two, how you're teaching it and modeling it for your teams, because they're feeling the same type of pressure that you are in a very different way, of course, but like that same ask to always be on. And so how do you coach around that? And how do you lead as a leader? So I want to close with this. Saying no is a leadership skill. It's a leadership skill that we don't always come born with. It's not a weakness. It's nothing that's going wrong. And there are times when we absolutely need to say no to things, and there's times where we can't. And I think part of your job as a leader is knowing the difference. And I encourage you, like, practice these techniques in some low stakes situations at first and help your team do the same. So this week, very tactical way to do this is say no to one thing that does not align with your top priority and try it. Do it with confidence, okay? And see how it goes, okay? So I invite you to share your experience with me and definitely please reach out if you have any feedback or questions, or if you need help with this. Like I said, I've been through this in many real life scenarios. So if you want to crack the code on what is holding you back and where you could say no to some things in your personal and professional life, let me know. You can reach out to me. My website is Alicia Cowan Coaching. It's ELISIAKEOWN coaching.com. I would love to hear from you. And please enjoy spring. Otherwise, I will talk to you next time, friends. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Executive Coaching Podcast with Alicia Cowan. If you're ready to have an executive coach who's ready to help you lead your team to success, then book an introductory call at aliciacowancoaching.com/call.